My name is Kylan McKeen. I am the Information Officer with the New Zealand IMT out here for the British Columbia deployment. So what I'm just briefly going to talk about today is what you might see behind me are some trees that are slightly bent or curled, as we say. So what happens with that, right, is when you get a fire that's quite intense along with winds that are rushing quite hard, what they'll do is they'll come through and they'll bend the trees or curl them in a way. So that's what we're seeing just behind us. I can't get over that way, but that's a combination of wind and the rank of the fire, or the intensity of a really hot fire. So that's just some general fire behaviour that we have going on here. So ladies and gentlemen, what I'll talk about just briefly is kind of a history lesson about what's happened with the White Lake fire that's obviously occurred behind me. So as we know, it started on the east side of Fraser River and then transferred over to the west side. Okay, so what happened was...
Start again.
Sorry?
It started on the west side.
Oh, the west side, it came to the east. Sorry, from the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, is that okay? I don't want to embarrass you.
No, thank you for correcting me. I'm still trying to get my directions right here. So so ladies and gentlemen, what I'll talk about just briefly is the White Lake fire, and basically a history lesson of what happened. So as we know, it started on the west side and transferred to the east side over here. So on Monday, July 10th, an evacuation alert was set by the CRD, and it was issued on the far fringe areas around Williams Lake and the city of Williams Lake. And that was due to the unpredictability of the weather and the winds that were occurring over on the west side. So there was just a combination of winds and the intensity of the fire that was growing. So and then on July 15th, an evacuation order was set by the CRD for the city of Williams Lake. Now at that time, on July 15th, the acreage or the areas burned was estimated at 38,000, and what happened, and it's still under investigation, is that the fire on the west side skipped over onto the east side. Now that's 150 meters at that point. So again, that's still under investigation as to how that transferred over, but there we have it. So it came over here, and what we know is that around that time, around July 15th, the temperatures were fluctuating at that time, but when it comes to fires, when there is a high intensity fire, it usually creates its own weather. Alright, so here we have an intense fire, high winds, doing its business, and that's how we end up behind me, unfortunately, with the fire that's and you'll have it on your maps as well. If I could just grab that off you, Rebecca. Sorry. That the current estimated of area burned is 13,211 hectares. Do you know predictability of fire, you know? And as I mentioned with the temperatures, there was just the temperatures were fluctuating at that time, and all around the Caribou complex, from what I understand, as the ladies have mentioned, we weren't there at the time, but from the history that was given, the temperatures were fluctuating, the winds were also increasing, and that way you just had this intense situation of fires just exploding all around the area. So, you know, it's again that unpredictability of fires.
Yeah, no, Tim and I actually came with our senior prevention officer, and there were times when she was looking at, like, what had been a tree was just white ash, and she just, like, she was shrugging. Like, she was like, I don't see how this, like, it must have been so hot, right? When we brought her.